This video is going to cover section 12.2 on scatter plots. So a scatter plot is just a graph that has our data pairs X and Y, where they're plotted as individual points on a grid with a horizontal axis, which is our X axis, and a vertical axis, which is our Y axis. An example that we could use to plot a scatter plot would be in Europe and Asia, m-commerce is popular. M-commerce users have special mobile phones that work like electronic wallets, as well as provide phone and internet services. For the years 2000 through 2004, we want to know if there was a relationship between the year and the number of m-commerce users. So here we have our data. One of our columns is X, our independent variable, which represents the year, and Y, which represents the number of users in millions. And so we're putting our units in there so that we know that it's not just half a person, it's 500,000 people. And here is an example of what that scatter plot would look like. So we can see along this horizontal axis, we have our years. Along the vertical one, we have the number of users in millions. And then each little blue data point or dot on our scatter plot represents one of our data points. So 2000, 0.5, 2002, 20, 2003, 33, and 2004, 47. So if we're going to do this, we are going to, first off, you're going to decide which is X and which is Y, because it's really important, because you're going to put your data into two columns, and the X value has to go in the left column, and your Y value has to go in the right column. That's how Excel decides what goes horizontally and what goes vertically. Include your label for each column as the first cell in your column, otherwise Excel will assume that first one is that. And then you're going to select both columns, including the label, and click Insert and pick the scatter plot chart. And it's like the third row, second chart in the chart section at the top of Excel. And I'll show you which one it is. So that's going to create the chart. Make sure you change your title so it looks like you want, and you want to add the labels to your axes. You may need to add chart elements or edit them to look like you want them to. So if we go over to Excel, here's our data. X is in the left-hand column. We're going to select everything, including the titles or labels at the top of our columns. We're going to go to Insert, and we're going to go over here to this one here. And there's Scatter, it says. So don't choose the ones where they're connected. We just want the dots. So we choose that one. And as you can see, it brings a lot of stuff up already for us. I'm going to shrink this a little so we can see it better. And you guys know at this point how to change your titles so they look like you want them to, maybe we get rid of the parentheses. I don't love how my horizontal axis is in 0.5s. So if I click on the axis and right click, I can format axis. I can change my units on the major tick marks to go by 1 instead of a half. Now I have those full years, those discrete values, but I don't have my axis labels. So if I go over here to add chart element and I go over to axes, well, I guess that's going to bring me back over here to format axis. I want to, oh, here we go. Add the labels, and next to axis, nope, that's not what I want at all. Next to axis. Okay, so that is the labels. Oh, I want to, so funny how this always throws me off. I literally just saw it too. My axis titles. How about I put titles in there, not labels? All right, so you're going to add the axis titles. I'm sorry. And so this is going to be our year. We're going to add the primary vertical axis title as well. And this is number of users in millions. You can just write number of users. Again, it's how you want it to be. So maybe we change the title to m-commerce. You know, whatever makes sense depending on what you're trying to explain to your audience. Okay. So if we go back to the slideshow, We have another example, Amelia. She plays basketball for her high school, and she wants to improve to play at the college level. She notices that the number of points she scores in a game goes up in response to the number of hours she practices her jump shot each week. She records the following data. So X is the number of hours she spends practicing. That's independent. And then the points scored per game changes depending on how many hours she practices. So Y is the dependent variable and X is the independent variable. So we're going to take this data and we're going to, in Excel, we're going to make a scatter plot. So over here under the Amelia tab, we have our data. It is highlighted already for us. Aren't we lucky? We're going to insert our scatter plot chart. And again, we need to add those axis titles and change the title of our, if we want, okay? So we could name this Amelia's, the jump was her jump shot. Amelia's jump shot. So I like how the axis, how the numbering goes, where I didn't like it in the last example. So actually, I'm going to go up here to add chart element. I'm going to add a primary horizontal. I'm going to add a primary vertical. And now I'm going to change what they say. So this one, my vertical one, is points scored per game. And then my horizontal one is hours spent practicing. A lot of times when we're working with data, especially if we've collected it ourselves, we really know it and we don't need this extra stuff. But the point is that you're going to be, sharing it in some kind of situation, whether it's like, in a conference or a workshop at work, or if you're doing research, and you want other people to know what you're talking about. And so that's why it's important to make it clear, visually easy to read, and so that people understand what you're showing them. So, all right. So here's that same scatter plot that we just did, different title. And then one of the things that's really helpful with scatter plots is that the direction of the relationship. So a scatter plot shows the direction or correlation of a relationship between two variables. And a clear direction happens when there is either high values of one variable occurring with high values of the other variables. That's a positive correlation. So X is bigger when, well, Y is bigger when X is bigger. They're both increasing. That's positive. Or high values of one variable occur with low values of the other variable. So your X is big, but your Y is low. That's a negative correlation. So here's a picture of positive correlation. So again, X has bigger values and Y has bigger values. So they're both small together and then they're both big together. So negative correlation goes the other way. X has big values, but Y's values are small. Other way around, when X has small values, Y has big values. So they're basically going down. And then here's a picture that we could say has kind of no correlation because the points are scattered all over. There doesn't seem to be a general direction going up or coming down. So we can also talk about the strength of the relationship. And you can determine the strength of the relationship looking at the scatter plot when you see how close the points are to a line or some other type of graph. We looked at a few pictures of nonlinear graphs. The exception to this would be if the data seems to fit like a horizontal line, then there's no relationship, even though they might all be close together to some horizontal line. But you want to look at your scatter plot and see if there's an overall pattern and any deviations from that pattern. So here we have a picture of a scatter plot that seems to have a negative correlation, and it seems to be a strong relationship because all the points, like it's almost like you could draw a line, a straight line, and hit a lot of those different points. So here again, they seem to be maybe a negative correlation. They seem to be coming down, but they're a little more spread out. So you might say that it has a weak negative correlation. And then this would be a positive correlation. It's going up, seems to be strong because the points are close together, but there's this one deviation that's kind of out of the norm, all right? And that happens sometimes. Sometimes it's an outlier, sometimes it's a mistake, but you might just have data that shows like this. So you can have positive correlation and negative correlation, and you can have strong correlation or weak correlation, and you can have no correlation. And so that's it. That's the video for section 12.2 on scatter plots.